Blog Talk Radio.
Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. I promise we are at the end of August and fall is right around the corner. Starbucks brought back pumpkin spice, so we are manifesting cooler weather, but that has not happened yet here in Florida. So if you're hiding inside like me in the air conditioning, you're in the right place. And whether you are listening live or listening later, you are in for such a treat. We have mystery author Lauren Thoman on with us today, and I'm so excited for you to meet her. If you haven't read her books yet, I will read her bio here so you can get to know her. Lauren Thoman writes speculative fiction for teens and adults. Her debut novel, I'll Stop the World, was selected for publication in 2023 by six-time Emmy nominee Mindy Kaling through her imprint, Mindy's Book Studio. Lauren's pop culture writing has also appeared in numerous online outlets, including Parade and Vulture. Lauren lives right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, with her husband and two children in a house full of dogs and fish. And when she's not writing, she's probably on the hunt for tacos or coffee, really, who isn't, and poking around her flower beds or buried underneath piles of dogs. And it is National Dog Day today if you're listening live, so love those puppies. Also, you can find out more about Lauren at her website. I did put a link to her website right there on the Blog Talk site. If you're listening live or if you're listening later, please check that out. It has all kinds of great websites. Miss another book release. Lauren?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I do hear you. You sound great.
My connection got really weird all of a sudden, but I think it's back.
Yay. Yeah, I hear you full. You're all strong, so all good.
Wonderful.
We're in the last couple of days of Mercury in retrograde, so you got to hang in there.
Yeah, things just get weird. Things just get weird. And now my dog's barking.
Oh, it's National.
She must have heard it was National Dog Day.
Yeah,
she heard there's a holiday just for her.
Right, she's ready for her interview.
It's true. She thinks she has a lot to say.
Right. I'm sure that we would love to hear from her, but we actually want to talk about You Shouldn't Be Here. And this is your new book that just came out this month, right? You want to tell everybody all about it and why they should go grab a copy?
Sure. You Shouldn't Be Here is like my first novel. It's a speculative mystery. It follows two main characters. One is a teenager who's pretty sure her house is haunted. The problem is no one believes her, and so she sets out to prove it. The other is a first-year teacher who has recently moved to town for her first real grown-up job, but also because a couple years ago her cousin disappeared from that town without a trace, and no one ever seemed to want to talk about it or look into it. So they both have their own personal mysteries they are looking into. They don't know each other, but what they don't realize is the key to finding answers lies with the most powerful and dangerous person in town, and he does not want anyone poking around his secrets and will do anything in his power, which is pretty much limitless, to make sure that his secrets stay buried.
Ooh. And when I was reading up about this book, I thought, is this going to be a series? Because our teacher sleuth sounds kind of like she might have, more things to figure out.
I mean, who doesn't at the age of 23? But no, this is a standalone title. Both of my books are standalone. The mystery is pretty solidly wrapped up by the end. However, never say never. We are living in an age where I think one of our thesis statements, it's never too late for a sequel. So who knows?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm a voracious reader too, and it's always fun to step back into a book with people that you know, because it's like, oh, my friends, how've they been, right?
It's true, and I mean, there's plenty of stories that you think are wrapped up, and then later you find out, oh, actually, there's more there. And we keep getting Hunger Games books, so anything's possible.
Right. Well, I wanted to ask what the inspiration was for this book. Have you known someone who disappeared, or did you watch a movie or TV and went, hey, I think I have an idea, or how did it come to you?
All my ideas sort of come from the whole mishmash of experience plus things I watch plus ideas I find interesting at the time. So with this one, it wasn't anything. I did not personally live through a haunted house or I didn't have a family member go missing. I just was really fascinated with the idea of accountability in situations where there's a huge power imbalance. And so it was the idea of, what do we do when someone is up to no good, but they're also the most powerful person in the picture? How do you hold? What do consequences look like there? Do you say this? And B, what do you do when you wind up in their crosshairs and you are, the proverbial ant facing the giant? And also, I love speculative stories. I love things that just exist a little bit outside of what we think of as possible in reality. And so I always like to include a little bit of that what if element. And so in this one, it was, what if you started hearing a voice in your house that you were pretty sure was some sort of entity, but you were the only one that could hear it? And those two ideas just kind of married into this book.
I love that. And I write paranormal books myself, and so I'm always into trying to make the suspension of disbelief be that everything else is so real. Maybe werewolves do live in Salem.
Yeah.
But did you have fun with the maybe ghosts are real, or, how did that all come together for you?
Oh, I have so much fun with the, what if this thing is real? Like, my first book is time travel, and because you can't prove something doesn't exist, right? All we can know is, well, I haven't ever heard of this before, so I assumed it didn't exist. But when something just happens to you, the options are either something is wrong with you, or you are missing some important information and you're being tricked, or it's really happening. And in my first book, my character who time traveled against his will spends the whole book kind of questioning, is this really happening or not? Or is it me? And I thought it was really fun to play with a character who, it never crosses her mind that maybe the problem is her. She's pretty well convinced. Now, other people are very certain the problem is her. But she's like, no, it's not me. This is really happening. I just need to figure out a way to prove it to you. But she's also a teenager, and she's very impulsive, and she might go about it in ways that adults might find a little reckless, but that's part of the fun of being 16.
Right. Well, when I was reading up about the book, it kind of reminded me, for any of the Joss Whedon fans out there, but in Angel, she had, I think it was Ghost Steve or something, who lived in her apartment.
Yes, it was Derek.
Ah, yes.
His named Derek, Cordelia's ghost. And honestly, that was kind of one of many, I mean, everything is an influence, so things I watched as a kid, things I've read as an adult, things I experienced last week, everything's always an influence. But, Dennis is
Dennis,
his name.
that's it. You're right. Yep. It's Dennis.
And one of them, though, was, that ghost. She's originally really scared of the ghost, but later she comes to be friends with her ghost, and her and just kind of were like roommates. One of them is dead. And I like the idea of
We're talking about ghosts, and the ghosts are interfering with your phone. You're breaking up.
Oh no!
Oh,
Now it's me. Now it's me that's being weird. Yeah, I have a technology ghost, I guess.
I guess so. Now I hear you. You sound fine.
That was what happened to me at the very beginning of the call, where all of a sudden it just got really weird. And I have not moved. I'm purposefully sitting in one place because I tend to pace, and then my reception goes weird. So I was like, no, I will sit right here and not move. But I based the town, so my story takes place in a fictional town called East Henderson, Pennsylvania, but I based it more or less on the area where I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania. And sorry, my husband keeps wandering downstairs on a work call and remembering I'm on a call and running away. That is distracting. The joys of working from home.
Right.
But I grew up in this eastern Pennsylvania town, which, looking back and like visiting it now as an adult, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this town. Like, it's fine. There's plenty. It's just the same as any other like mid-sized town. But at the time, I thought I lived in the dullest place on earth, and all I could think is, this town is so boring. There's nothing here. I can't wait to get out of here. And now I'm like, it's fine. It's par. It's just like normal American mid-sized suburb. But that's sort of the mentality I gave my character. I was like, she is so bored. When she thinks her house is haunted, she thinks that's awesome. Like, it doesn't occur to her to be scared. She's just like, oh, finally something interesting is happening to me. Like, and then she just gets frustrated because she's like, why does no one else see how cool this is?
So I don't know if you are a plotter or a pantser or a big outliner, but did you have any big surprises when you were writing the book? Like, did the ghost take on a personality, or was anything a fun surprise for you?
Oh, I always have plenty of fun surprises when I'm writing. This one, this is the most plotted book I have ever written. I am a reformed pantser, and now I'm more of what I like to call a plantser, which is both a combination of plotter and pantser, and also someone that would always rather be playing with her plants than actually writing. And this is my new hobby that I've decided that I don't have to work, which isn't actually how life works, but I wish it was. And so with this one, I had a detailed outline. I knew where the story was going to go, but things still, it's normally characters that will surprise me, or will assert themselves and decide that they're going to be a bigger deal than I thought they were going to be. So there were a couple of things. One, there is a much more significant romance plot in the book than I originally thought there was going to be, and it was just because every time I had my teacher, Madeline, interacting with another teacher at her school named Alex, who's a couple of years older than her, so he kind of takes her under his wing and shows her the ropes. But I always knew, I was like, oh, and there's going to be some sort of little attraction here, I think, because I thought it would be kind of fun if she was like getting to have a crush while also investigating a disappearance / maybe a murder. But every time we were on page, I was like, these kids really want to be in a rom-com. Like, this is all I can seem to be finding myself writing with them. And I'm like, no, you're supposed to be like looking up clues and investigating, and instead all they're doing is like stammering around each other and like, and like thinking about like, ooh, what did that mean? Does that mean he likes me? And I was like, why are these two acting like?
Oh, they needed you to write this book so they could be together.
And so, so now it's like got a pretty like it's not a romance, but it's still a mystery, but it's a romance with a pretty like hefty rom-com through line in there. Fun. That I'm not expecting to be writing, but they weren't going to have it any other way.
I love that. And, I always feel like, well, I'm more of a romancy writer anyway, but I always feel like in books, if characters don't have some sort of reaction, I feel like, well, then that's kind of less human, because we all do it. We can't help it. And so I love that they took that on and you let them.
Oh, and to me, I think that's one of the marks of saying, okay, I actually do know these characters and who they are, because they're making some of their own decisions.
Right. Did you have a favorite scene in this book?
It's kind of a spoiler
to
say what it was, but I had a lot of fun. Let's just say there is a point where both the romance and the high stakes murder plot kind of intersect. Like, they both come to a bit of a culmination at the same time, and I really devilishly enjoyed making my characters think they were in like really big happy moment, and then like completely flinging the actually you're not in a rom-com at them. Like, that was just me being kind of jerk. I was like, they're at the happiest right now, and I'm going to metaphorically drop a piano on their heads and be like, not that kind of story. Sorry you thought it was. That was pretty fun.
Well, I was going to ask you about your other book, the I'll Stop the World book. This one sounds like there is a teenage character, but it's more of an adult book. But I'll Stop the World, is that a YA book?
So they are both technically what we call crossover fiction, which is sort of upper teen through, the sky's the limit. And so I'll Stop the World, it's also a multiple point of view. It's actually got a much larger cast than You Shouldn't Be Here. And the main character, You Shouldn't Be Here, the main point of view character is an adult, and in I'll Stop the World, the main point of view character is a teenager. But they're both technically still crossover in that they both encompass both teenage and adult viewpoint. And yeah, I thought that I'll Stop the World was going to be marketed YA, and then found out that no, it actually could have gone either way, and my publisher decided to take it adult. And however, I will say, because I'll Stop the World is a time travel book and takes place largely in the year 1985. Some of the strongest reactions I've gotten have been from that sort of elder millennial to younger Gen X age group who remembers being a teenager in the 80s and the 90s. And they tend to respond really, really well to that book. And so I think it really is that crossover, because it's for people who are teens or remember that phase of life with nostalgia and like to revisit it.
Yeah, and when I was reading up on that book, I was like, this is like Back to the Future, but instead of going back to the 50s to check on your parents, they were like back in the 80s to check on grandparents, right? Something like that?
Yes. I like to say it's Back to the Future, but if instead of matchmaking, it's murder investigation.
Back to the Future with murder.
My original inspiration for that book was, what if Back to the Future, but there was no Doc Brown? Like, it was just Marty being lost in time. And so I was like, he would not know what to do with himself. And that's sort of where the seed of that book came from.
I love that. Well, what's next for you? Are you working on another book, or?
I am, but I'm not under contract for anything past. Both of my books were one-book deals, and so they both had an option on them, which means that, my editor can take a look at the next thing, but it's not a done deal. So I'm kind of dabbling in it. I am definitely working on a couple of different projects, but they have to get to need to be a little closer to done before I can actually try to take them out and see if anyone wants to publish them. So I have my fingers crossed that the one that I'm working on now will be the next published book, but it's different. This is a horror novel. still many points of view,
fun.
still all ages, still that touch of, well, more than a touch in this one of the speculative. This one's fully leaning into the speculative. But yeah, so just fingers crossed that someone wants to publish it.
Yeah, yes. I am a sucker for spooky, so horror novel, I'm all in.
Me
so
too.
Sending good vibes.
Yes, I love a good supernatural horror story.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, our listeners skew toward readers, and they are always interested in your writing journey. Like, you wrote articles and things too. Did you always want to write a novel? How did you get from magazines to novel publishing with Amazon?
So I actually, I didn't grow up wanting to be a writer. It was actually, I mentioned the Hunger Games earlier. It was actually reading the Hunger Games as a young parent. I had my kids were in, I think, kindergarten and preschool at the time that I flew through the Hunger Games books. And then got, I think, sleep deprived, made me a little weird, and I got mad that the books I read after the Hunger Games, I didn't like them as much. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to try to write a book. And that was a strange reaction to that. But I started writing, so, back in the early 2011. And I got an idea to start writing. And so I wrote a couple of books, and I got an agent, but those first few books I wrote didn't sell. We just couldn't find, because I do like to kind of mash up my genres, and that was just kind of always a hard sell. And so in the meantime, so we were trying, I kept writing books and not being able to sell them. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to keep spending all this time writing, I should maybe try to make some money doing it in some other way. So that's when I started writing my pop culture articles, and I just started freelancing for a bunch of different sites. And that sort of paid the bills while I was still plugging away at trying to get a novel finally published. And I'll Stop the World was one that I had been working on and off in between the other novels that I was focusing more on, and I finally finished that one in 2021, and it sold in 2022. But so the pop culture articles came after the novel writing and also during, and they're still, I pulled back from it, but I'm still writing them here and there, mostly to complain about TV shows that ended in a way I don't like.
Which I totally get, because now that we're in the age of binging, you can watch a whole show, all the seasons, in a month or two, and then you're like, oh my God, I wasted all that time because you couldn't nail the ending, Yeah,
so and they kind of go hand in hand though. Like I watch shows and movies and I read books, but writing about mostly TV has given me an opportunity to really analyze why things work or don't work for me in storytelling. And if I can pinpoint what wasn't working for me, or sometimes what was, it's just the ones where you're just really afraid so much you love something, those articles don't tend to get as many clicks.
Right.
But approaching it with that analytical mindset really has helped me quite a bit in figuring out, like, oh, is it that the show seemed to set up a storyline that didn't go anywhere? Is it that it did a twist that, didn't seem to fit with the characters? Like, what was it doing, and how could that have worked, or would there have been a better way to do it? And then I can incorporate those insights into my own work.
I like that. Well, now I have to ask, which shows have we missed that we need to see? Which ones are your faves?
Oh, my gosh. Recently, I was recently burned by the ending of The Umbrella Academy, as was like everyone. But I still think the first two seasons are fantastic.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
I am like salivating waiting for Severance to come back. I think the first season of that show was one of the most intriguing seasons of television, especially first seasons, that I've seen in a long, long time. So I loved every second of Severance. also I've been telling everyone that I know that they need to watch Bad Sisters, on which I just found out is coming back for a second season, and my first thought was how, because that story resolved so brilliantly in the first season. But I don't know what they're going to do in their second season, but yeah, Bad Sisters is a wonderful example of multiple point of view mystery storytelling it has a great cast, and it's so unexpected and so wonderful.
Oh, that sounds great. I'm adding that onto my list. I have to ask you, since you like adding speculative things to things, have you seen, I think it's My Lady Jane or Our Lady Jane on Amazon Prime?
Oh, yeah. I actually watched that one early. I reviewed it.
Did you enjoy it?
Pace. I did. I thought it was a lovely interpretation of the book. I loved that book. And I've met one of the authors, Jody Meadows, and she's just lovely. And so I was really crossing my fingers, hoping that the show would be good and do the book justice. And I think it did a great job. It was funny because it was a little tonally different than the book, but I think it still was just very, very fun to watch. And I'm very sad that they canceled it.
Oh, I thought it got renewed for another season. What?
No, they canceled it. But there are like a bunch of fan petitions about trying to get it renewed for a second season. Because I thought it did get renewed.
Yeah, it was so good. They need to do more. Ah, that was great. Well, and nowadays though, other places pick them up. Like I watched Manifest, and Netflix picked that up and finished it. And so maybe someone else will finish it.
I think that's the hope that the fans have. Everyone's crossing all of the digits in the hope that maybe someone will pick it back up.
Well, are there any other genre? Well, you're working on a horror novel, but since you like cross-genre things, is there any other genre that you'd like to write someday?
I ruled nothing out. I would love to. I have this superhero thriller that I've been trying to sell for close to a decade now, and it's for ourselves. So my agent just like keep it on the shelf, we'll pull it out at the opportune time, and I'm really anxious for that. I would love to write a full high fantasy someday, and I love reading hard sci-fi, but I will need to do a lot of research before I'm ever prepared to actually write one. But if ever I could get my brain around the science of it all and figure out how to translate that into an interesting story, I would love to take one of those on, because I love to read them.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, the superhero thriller, are you ever considering like self-publishing it and putting it out?
No, because self-publishing, I have nothing but respect for the people that can do that really well. I have some good friends that self-publish, and they're spectacular at it, and their work is amazing. But I also see what they have to do, like see what their job entails, and it's not a job description that I want. Like you have to do so much business-minded stuff to be successful in self-publishing, and that is not what interests me. So people ask a lot, like, well, if you've had so much trouble selling these books, why don't you just self-publish them? And because I wouldn't be happy to just throw them up on the internet and call it done. Like I'd want to do it well, and I also don't want to do the job that you'd have to do it well. So I think self-publishing, it can get a bad rap because people think it's easy to just, throw a manuscript up on Amazon, but really to do it well, it's a whole business model, and it's very different than the traditional publishing model. And I think the people who do it well are amazing at it. It's also not a job that I am interested in.
You do have to kind of be a publishing house, so.
You do, all by yourself, and that terrifies me.
Well, I hope you sell it someday, because I'm a sucker for superhero books.
Me too.
So superhero thriller would be really fun. Before we run out of time, how can readers find you after they read You Shouldn't Be Here? Are you on Facebook or Instagram?
Yeah,
how do they find you?
I'm on most of the social media sites: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. as Lauren Thoman Writes. I have the same handle on all of them, so if you find me on one, you can find me on everything. And also, if you forget that, you can go to my website, which is also Lauren Thoman Writes, which I guess is not helpful. If you can remember that for a website, you can remember it for social media. But, yeah, Lauren Thoman Writes at everything.
Okay, and we do have a link to her website right there on Blog Talk, so check it out. And thank you so much for being here today, Lauren. It was great chatting with you.
It was great to be here.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.